Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great time at GatsbyConf and I want to thank you for joining this presentation. So today we'll be talking about content-driven website development, which is a rather interesting approach and a new method to build some websites that truly empower content editors to manage their own websites on their own. But before we really get into it, let me shortly introduce myself. So my name is Rémi de Juvigny, and I work as a developer at Strapi, which is a company that builds a headless CMS. And at Strapi, I work on integrations. So my mission is to make sure that Strapi integrates well with other tools of the Jamstack ecosystem, like Gatsby, of course. And if you couldn't tell already, I am French and I come from Paris, where I'm currently working. So let's go back to building websites. I strongly believe that content is the heart of a website. Because if you're building a website, it's probably because you have a story to tell, you have some content to share. Maybe you're a company and you want to convince people that your product is worth paying for. Or maybe you're an expert and you want to share your knowledge with other people. Or maybe you're just a creative person and you want to have fun and share your work. But either way, the content is the heart of your website, and your website is just one way to broadcast it to the world. So that means that at the end of the day, design and code are both just tools that are meant to support the content. Of course, they're really important, and without them, we wouldn't be able to create a website. But we have to be team players and realize that as developers, our work when we're building a website is pretty much just to showcase the content that is provided to us by our teammates who are building the content. And so if content is the heart of a website, then why is creating the content so often the very last step in the website creation process? That truly doesn't make any sense to me, because what usually happens is that we have designers who are the first ones to start working on a new website. So they start working on new designs and mockups in a design tool like Figma, for example. But they don't have access to the content because it doesn't exist yet. So instead, they fill their mockups with some fake content, like some lorem ipsum for the text, or maybe some sample images from the internet. But their mockups are pretty much fake. And then they pass these designs to the developers, who start implementing them. And the developers start setting up a CMS because that's how they manage the content for the application. But the problem is that they still don't have access to the real content. So the CMS is filled by developers with like dummy content and lorem ipsum again. And only then, once the website is actually built, then the content editors take over the CMS and start filling it with some real content. But that's really a pain for everyone, because we have to work to actually fill our work with some fake data. And it's not only a pain, it's actually quite dangerous, because we're exposing ourselves to some really bad surprises by only adding the real content at the very last step of the process. And that means that quite often we realize at the very end, when we launch our website, that the content just doesn't match the website. I mean, maybe we have an image that doesn't have the same ratio at all, which breaks the website. Maybe the text paragraphs will be much longer, and that actually breaks the symmetry and the design of the page. And maybe the translation will have different lengths of text based on the language, so the design will be completely different from one language to the other. These are all situations that are completely impossible to predict ahead of time if you do not work with the real content from the beginning. So the solution to this is quite simple. It's that we need to put content at the heart of the process, which makes sense because content is already the heart of the website. So it should be the heart of the process too, to reflect that. And the way we can do this is that the very first step of building a website with this method will not be to work on the design. Instead, it will be to set up content structures in a tool like a CMS. And because we have a CMS ready from the very beginning, the content editors will be able to use it with an admin UI that allows them to work on their content from the very beginning. So they'll be able to collaborate with each other and to start iterating on their text, paragraphs, on their media assets, etc. And because they do not have to wait for the designers and the developers to be ready, that means that the content will be actually ready to ship much earlier in the process. And because the content is available so much earlier, that means that designers, when they start working on their layouts, can actually directly include the real content that comes straight from the CMS into their layouts. And developers too will be able to start iterating on their code by using the real content from the very beginning, because they'll be able to connect to the real CMS with an API or an SDK. So using this system, we've got no more lorem, no more fake content. So no more lorem, no more surprises, right? And the problem is that this system actually works super well for the first iteration, and it's for the first iteration of a website, but it's already a huge step in the right direction, but it doesn't account for all the changes that will be going, that the website will be going through. And that's a problem because websites are alive. Again, we said they have a heart. That's because they are living entities that will evolve and change over time. And that can be for so many reasons. Like maybe we have a change in the strategy of a company. Maybe we have like a change in the content team and they don't have the same processes. Or maybe just the existing content editors had a new idea that we hadn't planned for ahead of time. And these changes can actually cause a problem if they weren't planned for. So let's say we have a website that showcases a bunch of articles. So we've set up a pretty simple template that you can see here with a very rough markup. But let's say that we are a content editor and we've got a beautiful video that we want to showcase for a specific article because we think that it would really make the article stand out. But the problem is that this is not permitted by the template. So if you just want to add this video inside, like embedded inside of the content, then that's just not possible out of the box. So what we have to do is tell a designer or product manager about this. Then he will be working on like finding out how this change would actually work within the current website. And once we have a layout of the solution, then the developer can start working on implementing that change. And only then, once the website, the new version of the website is shipped, then the content editor will be able to include his video into his website. But that takes like a whole development cycle, and it's super expensive for everyone. Because first of all, it takes a lot of time because the content editor has to wait for designers, then developers to do their work. So by the time he can actually do the change, maybe like a couple of weeks have passed, which is actually huge. And for us developers, it's also quite frustrating to work on this kind of task because it's an interruption. Like we would prefer to be focused on more important issues, like the actual product of our companies, but we are interrupted again and again to make tiny changes to the website. So it's really frustrating for everyone. And a lot of the times, what happens is that the content editors just give up on their ideas because they realize that it's just not worth it and too complicated for everyone. And that's really a shame because it limits their creativity and the overall quality of the website. But when they do share their needs with the developers, us as developers, we're pretty lazy. So we do all we can to avoid doing significant changes. So quite often the problem is that the templates we're working with just do not match and are not a great fit for the content that we need to showcase. But instead, we do everything we can to try to hack it into working, like adding more props, adding more if statements, or adding more settings to a CMS, just so we don't have to make any significant work for it to function again. But as you can imagine, that's not really a good process, because what we end up with is pretty much a horrible website. So maybe we have a website where the content is still the hurt, but it's pretty much the hurt of a monster, because we're trying to support way too many edge cases, meaning that we have some hacks everywhere to get everything to work. And the content structure is overall way too complex. So in this situation, really no one is happy. And the developers have some spaghetti code that is completely impossible to maintain and way too complex. And for the content editors, like the structure in their CMS becomes way too confusing and trying to support like way too many use cases. So it really starts making no sense for anyone. And that's really the problem about like full page templates in general. But if we can try to put aside like these constraints of having to work with templates, like ideally what we'd want is to have a website where the content can just flow and the presentation layer can just adjust to adapt to that new content. And for us Gatsby developers, that flow it can be kind of familiar because it's actually pretty much how React works. We as developers give React some state, which is the representation of some data, and then React will do its thing and return some UI. And every time the state changes, the UI will update to reflect that change. But we don't have to worry about keeping the two in sync. That just always works. So what we'd actually want to do for our website is to let content editors really just add any content they want and to find a way to reflect that content into some real web pages on our website. That sounds really ambitious, but how exactly do we build a website that supports this system? And the good news for that is that we can keep using the tools that a lot of us probably already use, which is a good CMS, so we can structure our content. So Strapi is a very good CMS, for example, and a good static site generator that can actually generate some quality sites based on that content. So of course, Gatsby is a perfect match for this. But since it's not our tools that we need to change, it's rather because it's the way we use them and the way we think about them that has to change. And I think I'll introduce you to the concept of content-driven development through the example of a company that actually got this right. So let's take a look together at the homepage of Algolia. So Algolia is a company that has a team of content editors who work on creating several pages for all of their features, all of their products, the different use cases, case studies, etc. So let's take a look at their homepage and try to see if we can divide it into a template. So what we can see that it's pretty easy, first of all, to divide into several sections. Like there's a hero component, which has a title, a description, some buttons. So the hero would make for a pretty good template. Then some key statistics, a banner for an upcoming event, a banner for some statistics again, the overview of some important features, and finally, a wall of client logos. All right, so it's interesting to see all of these sections, but hey, we said that they probably have a lot of pages on their website, so let's take a look at any other one of them. So what we have here is their dedicated landing page to the headless commerce product use case. So again, it has a hero component, then some feature overviews, a highlighted statistic, some features again, and some frequently asked questions. So based on only this sample of 2 pages out of this rather complicated website, we can notice a couple of interesting things. It's that, first of all, they have some sections in common. Both have a hero component. And more interestingly, both have some feature overviews sections in common. But what we can notice is that they share these sections even though the 2 pages do not share the same structure at all. Like we can see that it's definitely not the same template that they're using because both are completely different. But they are able, like at a smaller scale, to share some sections of UI. And that concept can be pretty powerful because that means that these sections can be reused anywhere, in any order, in any page. And so based on only these two pages, we can deduct that the people managing the Algolia website have access to, for example, these 9 sections. And these sections are super powerful because by composing them and adding them one on top of the other, content editors are free to create whatever page they want. Now, this is a really promising concept, but it may sound still a little abstract. So what we're going to do is to show you how we can actually use this system using a real-world website. So to show you this demo, I'll be using a starter that we at the Strapi team have built for exactly this use case. We've built a starter that uses Gatsby on Strapi to build some corporate website, and it enables content editors to design their pages right from their CMS. So let's get started with it.
Now, to use this starter, the only thing we have to do is to open a new terminal window and to paste this command. And I will send you this command in the chat so that you can copy it easily and follow along. Now, what this command does is that it actually creates a mono repo, so both a frontend and a backend project. So the frontend will be a Gatsby application and the backend will be a Strapi application. And Strapi will ask us whether we want to enable the quick start option. And we'll say yes, because we want to get started as quickly as possible. So now this CLI will install a bunch of dependencies and run some webpack config. So it can take about a minute, more or less, to run. So I'll be accelerating this process for you guys. Now that the CLI has finished setting up the mono repo, let's take a look at the website that it created for us. So first, the CLI opened 2 browser tabs for us. One is from Strapi, and the other one is our actual Gatsby website. So let's take a look at that website first. We can see that it's a pretty typical company website, and it looks like a lot of sites that we've seen before in the past, like the Algolia website, for example. It's got some fairly common sections like testimonials, a newsletter form, or some call to action in the bottom. And it's got several pages that are ready to use for us. One is a pricing table, for example, and another one is a contact page so that your users can know how they can get in touch with you. So let's take a look at how this website was built in Strapi. And the first step for that is to create an administrator user by filling this form. Now that we have created our first admin user, we finally have access to the Strapi admin panel. So let's take a look at the pages collection type that was created for us in Strapi. The way this starter works is that every single entry in this pages collection type will create a new page on our Gatsby website. So let's take a look at the homepage, for example, and see how it was built. First, we have a metadata section so that we can provide all the right information for Gatsby's SEO component. But the more interesting part for us is the content sections. So content sections is a Strapi dynamic zone, meaning that it's an area where the content editor will be able to pick and choose any of the predefined components that he wants. So here we have a hero component, some feature rows, feature columns, some testimonials, and a lead form and some bottom actions. So you can notice that every single one of these components actually matches with a section that we have on our website, like the hero, the feature rows, feature columns, etc. So that's really powerful because it shows you how really Strapi and your CMS is really how you can control the website, and the website is only there to reflect the content that you set up in your CMS. So let's see how we can leverage this concept and create a new page on our website. To do this, we'll create a new page. And let's say that I want to create a page dedicated to GatsbyConf and to this presentation. So we'll just add some data so that we can have this example ready. Now that we have set up the metadata component, let's add some actual content to our website. So the way we do this is by adding some components to the content sections. Since it's going to be a page about a presentation, then I'll be choosing the large video as the first component of our website. Now let's add some more content so that we can have a more well thought out page with some more contextual information. So to do this, we only add a new component to the bottom of that large video. And what we want here is to have a bottom actions section so that we can give some call to actions for users to check out this corporate starter. So let's say check out this starter on GitHub. And we can add a new button that links to the GitHub repository. So that's really how you can design a page in Strapi. You only have to enter the content, and then everything will be ready ahead of time to display this content with a beautiful UI. So let's check out the page that we just created. To do this, we have to save this entry. Now, usually, if we were running in production, we'd likely have a webhook that sends a notification to a service like Gatsby Cloud to rebuild our website. But since we're running on localhost, I'll just restart my local Gatsby development server. Now that Gatsby is ready, I can refresh the page and go to the path that we just created, which is /gatsby-conf. And I can see the page that I just designed from my CMS. So I've got the large video that I set up, and then finally, the call to actions that I entered from my CMS. Now that you can understand how a content editor is actually going to manage the website and create new pages as he wants based on the components that we provide, let's go back to the presentation. But let's take a step back and wrap up what we learned today. The first takeaway from this presentation should be that content should be the heart of your process. It shouldn't be the last step that we do after building the website. It should actually be the very first thing that we work on. And finally, I would advise you to stop thinking in templates and rather think in sections, meaning in templates that are smaller, reusable, and composable, because that's how you're going to empower content creators to design their own pages on the fly and to express themselves by creating more pages like they want to. So thank you again, everyone, for attending this presentation, and I'll be happy to continue the conversation further. So you can reach me on Twitter, or you can reach out the Strapi account on Twitter as well. And we also have a booth here at GatsbyConf, so we'll be really happy for you if you could drop in and say hi. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.